So once again, welcome to Innovation Made Simple, Shifting Mindsets, Creating Impact. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Fernanda Correa, and I'll be helping out with the webinar. We hope you get a lot of value out of the session and enjoy the content, whether you're watching this live or on demand. Talking about innovation today, we have Nilofer Erdebil, founder and CEO of Spring to Innovation. Nilofer is a TEDx Ottawa speaker and the author of the international best-selling book, Future Proofing by Design. She has dedicated her career to helping organizations achieve remarkable advancements through design thinking principles. So with that, I'm excited to pass it over to Nilofer.
Thank you so much, Fernanda. Really appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Today we have a fun session where I'm going to be chatting a lot about innovation and shifting mindsets, creating impact. I love our courses because they're interactive, and I love that our webinars are the same too. So if you want to ask or comment in the chat, please feel free to do so. Maybe get us started by letting us know what your name is and where you are dialing in from. So today we're going to start out with chatting a little about innovation and talking about the truth about innovation. A lot of the time, people assume that innovation is only big ideas, and that's not the case. It's not about a massive or disruptive change all of the time. Sometimes it is, but it has usually taken a lot of time to get to that main major innovation. And innovation can and should be simple and consistent. And that's one of the things that I love helping organizations with and making sure that the teams are set up in order to be able to do innovation consistently. In the past, a lot of teams have had innovation projects, innovation teams, or called it something else, and that's really good. But at the end of the day, true sustainable innovation comes from everybody in the organization understanding what innovation can mean for them, how they can contribute to it, and what their role is in innovation. And so today I'm going to chat a lot more about the mindset component of it and some of the culture. A lot of the time people think that they're not creative and it's too risky, or we don't have a big budget, and those are all not the case. We're all creative and in different ways. And in a way, if you are doing innovation and have a process around it, you're actually de-risking innovation and the future of your organization. And then we need a big budget. It's funny, most of the time, innovation comes out of necessity and resource constraints. And I know now more organizations are in a time where they need to do more with less. And this is actually the ideal time for being innovative and making some of those changes, and sometimes not with a huge budget. When we chat with clients and then talk to their customers, it's fascinating the types of things that they actually want and can be implemented with a lot less of a cost than they initially thought it would be. So a lot of innovation is getting down to what are the challenges that you are trying to solve. If I had to put words around what is innovation, what is it all about, I think there is a lot of creativity. But it's also application of that creativity. And innovation doesn't have to be one big idea, but it can come from borrowing ideas from other industries, other countries. And like I said, it's sometimes born out of doing more with less. Next slide, please. So here's a really fascinating example that I wanted to chat a little bit about, and that's the story behind Red Bull. Red Bull actually started in, I think, 1976 and in Thailand, and it was actually somebody that had been seeing truck drivers and workers, and they were drinking this really sweet caffeinated drink. And so they thought this was really brilliant, and they wanted to bring it to the rest of Thailand. In the early 80s, an Austrian entrepreneur actually saw this innovation in Thailand and then decided that this would be really great to bring to the rest of the world. And so he started up a business and then came up with also some marketing innovation. So the first innovation is around seeing something in one country and being able to bring it to other countries, and then seeing it applied in one way to one type of a customer, and then applying it in a slightly different way to a different type of a customer. And so for those that are on the call, how many of you do you drink Red Bull, and why do you drink it? And I'm pretty sure most of you guys are doing it more for performance enhancements rather than to be able to get through the workday. And then the third type of innovation that Red Bull came up with is that it's basically the marketing component of it. If you've seen Red Bull commercials, Red Bull has wings is their tagline, their famous slogan, and they sponsor a lot of extreme sports because they want to be associated with people that are doing fun, exciting things and really pushing their limits. And so if you notice, something like this is not a technology innovation. And so often people assume that innovation is going to be a technology innovation, but it's small things that are done that allow people to reframe and reimagine what something is for them or for the people that they're serving. So I love the Red Bull example, and I'm sure there's lots of examples of innovation that you see in your life all around you. Some of the companies around are more famous for their innovations than others. I know when I ask companies, what other companies do they find most innovative? I hear Apple, Amazon, Airbnb, and they are certainly all very creative and innovative because they've been able to take something that has been a pain for customers and then been able to find solutions around it. When I think back to the original Apple computers, I was really fortunate to be in a school in Western Canada, actually, where we had a number of Apple IIe computers that were donated to us. And so I learned how to type as a kid on computers. And then fast forward a couple years later, where my parents wanted to get us a super high-tech computer that we could do our homework on. And we went to stores, and my parents ended up picking out an IBM PC Junior. Really nice wireless keyboard, but it was on DOS command prompts. And so for those that might not know what that means, anything you have to do, you have to type it out in a way that the computer can understand. And if you're at the time, if you were new to computers, it took a long time to figure it out and to get it working. And in the back of my mind, every time I got onto this computer, I thought, why aren't we using the same type of computers that I saw in school? And I think some of these companies that have been known for innovation, the reason is that they've been able to take challenges that people are having and then make people's lives easier with those innovations. So I think of innovation as a process rather than a moment. So innovation is about approaching problems differently and not with magic solutions. It's an approach to problem solving and understanding and then defining what the problem is. Often, at its core, innovation usually needs to have a problem and then a process to kick off to solve that problem. Organizations have innovation centers, and they're really good. I think they start out with great intent, and they work really well because when they evolve and when they're part of a system to help out organizations. Innovation centers don't work well if they are the only ones in the organization expected to innovate. Part of that is because the people that are outside of the innovation center know that they are also innovative and feel a little bit left out sometimes. And then at the same time, the people in the innovation center get or lose track of what's going on outside within the whole organization. And so when businesses don't focus enough on aligning the innovation centers with the rest of the business, challenges happen. The other reason that innovation centers end up failing is because of a loss of champions, whether champions move to another part of the organization or another organization. And the third challenge with innovation centers and why they might fail is they're not just evolving, but their initial purpose has changed. And so when I think about innovation labs that I've been part of, one in particular comes to mind where we were initially set up to do some prototyping and testing, explore partnerships to see if we can create different types of solutions in particular industries. And then slowly, as the Innovation Center itself moved to another department and had new leadership, all of a sudden we were expected to make in quarter revenues. And that's just not realistic for how the Innovation Center got created. And so a lot of innovation is making sure that you're setting up for success. You're creating the processes for how people can be innovative, the areas that they can be innovative in, the type of innovation that your organization wants, and then really working hard to create that culture and that leadership that can champion innovation internally. And so it's really important to define what innovation is and how we approach our work and our life with innovation. And for most of the innovations that I see, you really need to have a problem to solve in order for that innovation to be successful. So next slide, please. So a lot of the work that we do is around deeper clarity for the team itself to figure out and align around what the problem is that they think they need to be solving. And then working with design thinking to better understand their customers in order to be able to develop solutions for and with our customers, and still keeping in the back of their minds what might be some signals that they're seeing in the near future or in the far future that can impact the type of innovations and the types of areas that you need to be working in, and always a mindset. And we'll chat about mindset in a little bit, but it's not just an innovative mindset, thinking about the different types of mindsets that you need to have throughout an initiative, from coming up with ideas to implementing it, to marketing it, to sustaining it. And the reason I spend a lot of time talking about the team alignment component of it is because I've seen a lot of organizations where they want to be innovative, they want to be creative, and they want to not risk too much, but not enough time is spent at the beginning thinking through all these things and getting the entire team to line up so that when an initiative starts or when a group is started up to be innovative, or an ask is being made to the organization to be more innovative, there's not enough boundaries around it to be able to help people focus. And so when you align around what innovation looks like and then have a better idea of what's happening with your customers and the trends around your customers, and you create that sandbox for people to come up with ideas and implement innovation in, it's going to be a lot more successful than if you were to say, feel free to be innovative. We have a culture that wants innovation. You also have to have the processes around that, the leadership around it, and the mindset of not just the people, but also of the leaders to be able to adopt innovation within your organization and understand the types of innovations that are going to be adopted. An example that I'll give you from my past is I was working at a company where we had an innovation contest. And so they opened it up to the entire organization, and they wanted to have innovation ideas that they could take to market and make more revenue off of. And one of the ideas that I submitted won. In fact, there was, I think, 4 of us that had the same idea, slightly different variations of it. And it was fantastic. They made a huge announcement. We got a little award for it. And then I messaged the team that was responsible for implementing it and said, hey, if you need any help, super happy to help or know what's going on with the initiative as you guys are moving it along. And crickets. I didn't hear anything from the team. I messaged them again a year later, and they said they were working on it and to watch for it in market. And then a year and a half later, I noticed a variation of it in market, but it was quite different than what I had envisioned. And when I pulled up the other applications with a similar idea, it was quite different than what they had imagined. And so even though there was innovative idea that got accepted with senior management, everyone was aligned around it, it wasn't fully executed. And so in order for innovation to be successful, you have to make sure that there's multiple different types of people in there and really taking the time to do some prototyping and testing with your end clients and continuing to shift and adapt and look for possibilities and opportunities, even when you think you've come up with the best solution ever. So the mindset component of it is super important. I know a lot of people out there talk about going and shifting from a mindset of fear to curiosity. And this is particularly hard to do when we're in financially constrained and less stable environments. And so, really taking the time to embrace experimentation and work towards learning rather than coming up with something perfect. It takes a huge mindset shift, not just from people that are working, but also from a leadership perspective. And then reframing failure as learning opportunities. And again, this is super hard because we have tight timelines and we're supposed to be succeeding in our work environments. And that's not how innovation happens. Innovation happens from learning a little bit here, learning a little bit there, and thinking about how what you've learned can be applied in the future. A lot of the time, there's some shame that goes along with failure, especially in work environments. If an idea didn't work, if the implementation didn't work, if it didn't have the uptake that we wanted to have in market, rather than pulling back and thinking through what are some things that we learned from here and how can we use that to our advantage to make sure that the next time we have an even better implementation. And finally, innovation isn't the job of innovators. And so it can't just be one person, it can't be a team, it's for everybody. So, how do you set up environments that allow for people to come up with ideas and implement ideas on a daily basis so that there's a culture of innovation and the whole organization is able to be innovative? And that a lot of the time comes down from senior leaderships, top down, as well as bottom up. The reason I say top down and bottom up is leadership definitely has to buy in. You need to have the champions in there, the support financially, time-wise as well. You need to have some processes in place that make it easy to have that consistent innovation. The other aspect of it, though, is it has to be throughout the whole organization. And it's unfortunately that sometimes we get pulled in to organizations by senior leaders and create programs, structures, align the leadership team. And then when we go to implement it and ask working level folks how we might be able to implement the culture of innovation, how they can be a lot more innovative on a daily basis. And because that messaging hasn't been fully move through the chain with the appropriate reward systems, with the appropriate guardrails, it doesn't always go down to a working level. And so it's really important to have everyone in the organization understand how important it is and to make shifts in their mindset and shifts in the way that they work. One particular organization, probably about 8 or 9 years ago that we worked with, we created an innovation training program for them. And a colleague there had mentioned maybe we should test it out on the group that we wanted to provide the innovation training for, which was at a working level. And so I talked to 5 or 6 people at a working level and told them about the innovation training that we had created and to get their thoughts on it. And when I asked, do you think this would be applicable in your organization? They all said no. And by the last one, I was feeling really frustrated and not understanding why they didn't think this would be applicable in their organization. And so I went a lot deeper and asked more questions to the final person that I was talking to. I provided examples of how they could be more innovative in their job. And the person responded back to me when I asked them, so do you think you could be more innovative? And they said, no, it's been beaten out of us. And my heart sank because they had been there for 6 years and they'd been trying to make innovation happen. They'd been coming up with all these ideas and working on overcoming some of the workarounds that they had. Unfortunately, their immediate leader didn't have this mindset. And so even if the senior leaders have it and it doesn't flow all the way through, um, the morale can really go down and there could be disengagement from innovation if that right culture and that championing and that reward system isn't put in place. And it's not just the growth mindset of being curious and open to experimentation. It's not just about reframing failure as learning, but it's also being open. It's about what are the different things that need to be challenged, what's happening in other parts of the world, in other industries, and really listening in order to get the messaging and the insights out of it. Another example that I have is an organization that I worked at many, many years ago. And in this organization, I was an engineer and doing software development and design. And I was creating super robust, scalable solutions that I was super proud of as an engineer. And then our sales team went out and sold a solution to one of our customers that was quite different than what we had created. And so, as an engineer, I got really upset by this and didn't understand why they weren't selling what we were actually building. Fast forward a few years later, and I realized, wow, we missed a huge opportunity to understand our customers better and to ask them why you want that solution rather than the one that we have, so that we could have switched around what we were creating and had a bigger market and a bigger market share if we'd taken that time to understand what this market feedback was saying. Because a lot of the time, we're super proud of the things that we're creating, and we think it is innovative, and it is innovative, but it might not be what our customers want. And true innovation comes from not just that creativity and implementation, but applying it in a way that people are going to start using it and shift their behavior and shift the outcomes that they're going to have. Next slide, please. I actually have a quick poll for you guys. And so this is a question for you. What is your biggest blocker to innovation at work? So I think we have a quick poll here. And so if you feel like fear of failure is a challenge, lack of time, no leadership support, or not my job, please select those. And then we have an other category too. So if you do select other, would you mind writing it in the chat what the challenge is? So we want to know, what is your biggest blocker to innovation at work? Is it fear of failure, lack of time, no leadership support, not my job, or other? And if you select other, if you could write in the chat, or even if you've selected one of the other ones, if you don't mind clarifying a little bit more about that challenge, that would be really helpful for us. And we'll give you guys about 20 more seconds. What's your biggest blocker to innovation at work? Fear of failure, lack of time, no leadership support, not my job, or other? Be about 10 more seconds for that. And as you guys are selecting, there's a couple comments that I'm going to read from our chat. Another selection someone was talking about is lack of funding or delayed funding, so change is not possible as planned. Yeah, that's something that we see a lot too. The lack of funding or the funding not coming in on time really impacts any plans that you might have, especially if you don't have a dedicated innovation team, or for some organizations, innovation as a side of the desk initiative. Just going to go back to the chat. Oh, here we go. Okay, so our innovation poll comes out with lack of time is one of the biggest challenges that you have in your work, followed by no leadership support, And then fear of failure and not my job is the lowest. And we have a bunch of people at other. And so I'm just going to read a couple more that are in the chat. What I was mentioning earlier too is a lot of the time organizations want innovation and they don't provide funding for it. And so no funding and no time, and innovation becomes a side of the desk initiative. And that is super hard to do and then to maintain. There's a comment in here that they selected no leadership support, but it's also goes along with leadership not having a concrete understanding of why their support is so important. Yeah, and I've run into that as well too, is leaders not understanding why their support is so important. Leadership support makes or breaks innovation in organizations for sure. Some other comments is innovation teams who block innovation work because it's not theirs. I've seen a little bit of that too. And I think that goes back to that culture within the organization, leaders, how they support innovation too, and helping people understand that it's everyone's job and not one particular team's job. Psychological safety is not always there in teams too, and it's how do you create a culture and a mindset throughout the organization where it's okay to throw out crazy ideas, and if they don't work, they don't work, but how do you build on them? I mean, who would have thought that a drink that was made for truckers and labor workers becomes so popular for extreme sport enthusiasts? You don't know where things are going to evolve to. Some other comments include there's a gap between IT and the user experience. Yeah, we see that quite a bit as well too. And sometimes there's also a gap between what you yourself would do versus what your customers would do too. And having had that technology and IT background, sometimes I create solutions and then I show them to my non-technical friends, and they look at it like, what is wrong with you? Why are you making this so complicated? And it's because my brain doesn't work that way. And so, yeah, the making sure that all of the teams are aligned and understand what even simple and easy is makes a huge difference too. And then other comments include people have a narrow view of what constitutes innovation, which usually means software change, AI, or data analytics, and they miss the way that innovation can occur in organizations, policy, and in programming. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's why I try to lead with innovation is not about technology. And some of you actually have comments in here that you do work in organizations that do foster innovation and have leadership that is dedicated to innovation, which I love to hear. But sometimes you come from environments where that's not the case, and it's hard to present and teach and propose ideas with products so that leadership can see the value of it. Yeah, absolutely. All of these are very common, so it's not out of the normal. So what do you do about all of these challenges? And I think that's where the big value is in creating that innovation mindset, bringing in dynamic mindset, and also creating psychological safety zones, and making sure the organization is in a position to be able to collaborate. And I'm not sure if I mentioned earlier, it's not just one person that helps innovation become more real. It's actually a combination of multiple people. And so for innovation and organizations to be truly innovative, especially if they're large organizations, you want to do cross-functional brainstorming. And in order to be able to do that, there has to be an understanding of who the people are within the organization, what they do, what they bring to the table, and then how they can work together to be able to brainstorm around what the problem is, as well as what the solutions are, making sure that people are clear on their roles and that trust is built amongst them. I've worked in companies, in organizations, in teams where there was so much trust there that we encouraged each other's creativity, and we made sure that we were able to help each other be the most successful version of ourselves, as well as for the company too. And so creating more clarity within organizations, within teams, actually creates more trust and creating that shared language. And there was a comment around IT as well as businesses not necessarily on the same page. There's slight gaps. That's a huge part of it. And then having people in organizations be facilitators and creating space for all voices to be heard. And innovation really is a team sport. And again, it's not just about technology itself. And what it really comes down to is everybody in the organization knowing what the challenge is, knowing what their opportunities are to be able to innovate, and then knowing how to work with others in order to be able to innovate as well too. Next slide, please. So I'm sure you've heard this before. Quick wins do matter, and that's to create the motivation and the engagement going. And then also to foster that positive growth mindset where people are learning a little bit at a time and then being able to apply it and creating an impact. One of the major challenges that I see in organizations is that they don't measure innovation. And I don't mean thinking about, well, are we doing innovative projects, but what constitutes innovation in our organization? And being very specific on it so that people know how to deliver on it. It could be number of ideas, it could be number of initiatives that are, if you want to do technology, using a particular technology, a number of projects that are creating greater impact with customers. It could be efficiency. Innovation can be about efficiency and productivity. And each organization and each team is going to be different in terms of how they measure innovation. The most important thing is to think about how you're going to measure innovation right from the start, because that's going to help your team be aligned and know how they can contribute to innovation if you have measures of success for innovation. And ideally, you keep it consistent month over month or year over year. And if there is a shift in how innovation is measured, make that clear to the whole organization, to the whole team, and give time for that to be able to ramp up as well too. Next slide, please. So finding innovation in daily work. A lot of this comes from empathy within the team and within customers. And what I find really interesting too is being able to observe and truly listen. I think a lot of the time for innovation and working with customers, sometimes we end up looking for the statements that are going to confirm our beliefs rather than really digging deep into what they're really saying and what some opportunities could be. And so that's why that curiosity component comes in and asking. And so some things that we do with organizations is helping them with 5 whys, or sometimes you could do 3, asking them why at least 3 times, better understanding the current pain points and where are the repetitive frustrations that continue to happen, and where are workarounds in the organization or in the culture. And this is really difficult for people that have been in the culture or the organization for a long time because they're just so used to the workarounds. And then when something comes across that changes it, they realize how much work they were doing to do a workaround. I'll give you an example from my home. I just recently, during the holidays around Christmas, got a new washer and dryer. My washing machine actually would sometimes stall before it went into the rinse cycle, and I wouldn't realize it until I went to go check up on whether or not the load was done. And so I would say probably 30% of the time it would stop and not rinse. And so I'd have all this laundry sitting in water for hours, sometimes overnight. But I was just so used to this that it was just part of my normal workaround. Oh, I'll just go check up on it and then work through it. when I bought my new washer and I realized how much brain space this workaround took and how much easier it was now with the new washing machine, it blew my mind and made me think about, man, a lot of organizations do this on a daily basis, is they're used to doing things in a certain way, not necessarily because it's the most efficient way, but they put some processes in place, some solutions in place to be a temporary band-aid that ended up lasting years and sometimes decades, and people continuing to do it as a workaround rather than actually fixing it. And there's times where you can't because you don't have the resources, the funding for it. But making sure that it is still on your radar as something that is a workaround and that might not need to be permanent. And we have a great comment in the chat here too. Even innovative projects might be difficult to push through, especially if the risk of failure is higher, even though many organizations pay lip service to learning from failure viewpoint. And that's absolutely right on, is a lot of organizations don't understand the risk of failure and think that it's actually higher than it really is. And so it's really important to align the whole organization around it, because some organizations don't want to end up on the front paper of the news, while other organizations are much more open to failure. I think it just depends on the risk reward appetite that the senior executives and the industry has, and making it as clear as possible to everyone in the organization is really important. So we're coming near the end. If you guys have any more comments or questions, feel free to put into the chat. Questions, feel free to put into the Q&A. I'll be answering them in a second. But like I mentioned earlier, each organization is different. And so understanding what innovation means, or helping develop the definitions for what innovation means in your organization, creating processes around innovation, as well as the mindset and the culture within your organization for innovation is super important. And it can start from one person at a time, but if you're able to do it top down and bottom up, it's going to have a lot more impact. And the number one thing for innovation is you need to have a problem that you are solving, or you need to have a problem that your customers have that you're working to solve, and being able to define it as accurately as possible so that you're creating those boundaries for people to be creative within, and creating clarity around how people can help within the organization on a daily basis to be more innovative. And companies that are out there that have done really well, that you'll recognize, have this as part of their culture, where people can bring their ideas on a daily basis, even if there aren't resources. Resources will be found in the organization to be able to help them expand on the ideas itself. Because if you think about how the organizations that are so successful around us began, it's kind of crazy. When I think about Amazon, I'm still amazed that they started out as an online bookstore and spent so much time on evolving their technology to be more efficient, and then began selling those services. And that's how Amazon AWS began, which is probably the most successful part of their organization. And then from the online bookstore, they realized that they could do this for other businesses. And so they started creating purchasing and online stores for brands like Toys R Us, to now we have the current state of Amazon, where you can probably purchase most things that you want, and they end up showing up on your doorstep within a day or two. And so innovation can start out small and then build and build and build, and you never know where it's going to take you. So with that being said, are there any questions that folks have that we can talk about around innovation and innovation culture, innovation processes, innovation metrics, anything that's on your mind?
So while people are still like maybe processing it all and going through some questions they might have, just wanted to share here a quick example. This is something we shared in the Deeper Clarity group a while ago about a interesting story about an innovation. It was a European company that was selling bicycles to the US, and they were having a problem. So as you mentioned, it started with a problem that the bicycles would always arrive in the US broken, some parts broken, because people were not handling it very carefully with the logistics side. And they were, trying to figure out as many ways what could they do, like maybe with the bike to make it better, to try to solve this problem. And then someone just said, okay, what is something? And then it's thinking about the customer. What is something that people in the US value a lot? And they said, well, they do love television and they value that a lot. So what they did is they got the box where the bicycle went in, which is like pretty much the size of a big TV, and they drew a TV on the box. So when people were handling that, they would handle with care because they thought it was a TV.
Yeah.
So it's a very simple innovation. It's just changing the box.
Yeah.
Very low cost, simple, but something that it takes you some time to really think about it and think about the customer and really understand the problem. The problem is not with the product, right? So how can you solve it?
Yeah, that's such a great example. Thanks for reminding me, Fernanda, about it. Yeah, and yeah, it was in our LinkedIn group as a great way of showcasing how innovation can happen and how important it is to understand not just your customers, but also the whole journey that they're going through and all the people that are interacting with your product or your service throughout, because that small change really made or broke the experience for customers because they would either get the bike that parts were broken or all together and really ready to go too. So yeah, that's a great example of a non-technology innovation out there too.
Yeah. And
Thank
we have a question here that
yeah.
is, I think people also had comments about it. That is, what's your best advice for selling an innovative idea internally? Because I think usually people struggle with that.
Yes, yeah. People definitely struggle with that. I've struggled with it working in organizations, especially large organizations, on how can you sell innovation internally. And I think the first best way is making sure that your idea is aligned with the organization's mandate and what you're trying to, what the organization is trying to solve and what they deem is innovative. And then the second thing is at the end of the day, it's a lot about the people in the organization. And so for your team lead, understanding what's really important to them as not just a person, but also for their role. How are they um, being measured and what do they gravitate towards? What are their areas of interest and what are some of the things that they want to move forward? And it reminds me of a boss I had many years ago where I went in asking for money and for my project, and I had a whole list of reasons as to why this project was going to be amazing. And then I turned around and I asked them, what would you like this initiative to do? And the two things that he came up with were not even on my radar, but my project would do. And so I think understanding the people that we're working with and that we're trying to have as champions and bring on board in order to be able to sell innovation is super important. The other aspect of it is if you are creating innovations for another team, especially within an organization, making sure that you spend the time to listen to them and understand things from their perspective, and then showcase what you're working on to them to make sure that they feel like they're part of the process, and also so that you can truly understand what the challenges are for them. Because sometimes it's the smallest things that make the biggest impact on whether or not your ideas are successful and whether or not they will get funding, if they will be championed. And so that listening aspect of it and picking up on the nuances on what's important for other people is super, super valuable. One other question that we have here is, what was the solution for the people that you worked with that they were giving you a hard time when you were asking them if the proposal of innovation was working? Oh yeah, I don't mind repeating it. Yeah, not a problem. And so this particular organization was really fascinating because there was a huge disconnect. And sometimes that happens in organizations, especially if they are large and have multiple layers to them too. And there's sometimes some hierarchy. What was really interesting is I listened to the people that we did that presentation, that training for, that we were supposed to deliver them the training for. And I wrote down a whole bunch of notes. And then I was actually able to have a data-based discussion with the senior leaders. And the senior leaders were actually shocked at what they were hearing. And I think it's because there was that layer of disconnect. And so once they were provided these insights, then they were able to really shift up how they thought about innovation and then be able to pass that down further and make sure that that messaging got moved down further than beyond them. Because a lot of the time, it seems like organizations don't understand across the board and up and down exactly what's going on and what the mindset is of the people in the organization. And I think that's something that more and more light is being brought to, and we certainly talk about it with organizations as well. Is it's amazing to have those senior leaders that are championing it, but it can't just be the senior leaders. It has to be leaders throughout the organization at all levels and people at the working level understanding how the direction that the organization wants to shift in terms of innovation and risk and what the future mandate is going to look like. Things change so fast. There's so many things changing all at the same time. How can we expect everyone to understand what's important when it changes so fast? And so that alignment component of it around what innovation means, what risk means, is super important regularly, consistently, so that the organization stays aligned. Because then you could pump a lot of money into initiatives that just aren't going to move forward even internally, let alone without even making it to market to customers. If the people in your organization aren't on the same page around innovation, then it's not going to happen, regardless of how much money, time, effort that you're putting in. Making sure that the whole organization understands what innovation means for them, how people can contribute, and that it flows all the way through is the most important aspect of it. Thank you. Thank you so much for your questions. I'm going to pass it back to Fernanda, but if you do have more questions, feel free to send us an email or join our Deeper Clarity LinkedIn group. And we're on there watching and building conversations and putting up interesting tidbits on whether it's in design thinking, innovation, alignment, whatever it takes from a human perspective to make sure that organizations can be more effective, efficient, and with happier employees along the way.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Nilüfer, for all this amazing content and sharing all of this experience, because I think this is really valuable. And thank you for everyone for joining us today.